Welcome to episode 34 of the Operators Pod. We are going to talk about acquisition. We're going to talk about efficiency at scale. So like when you start acquiring a lot of customers, what happens? Jason's got a killer panzerism, so stick around to the very end of this episode. As always, our sponsors, we got to thank those up front. Fulfill, SendLane, Northbeam. Let's just jump into it. This is going to be an e-commerce packed episode.
So guys, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. In about an hour, my good friend Heidi, who's a great photographer, is coming over here to take some pics because I've been told I needed some real pictures of me for marketing purposes. So we got a little photo shoot going on here as soon as this wraps.
You didn't want to just use your AI photo from the Operators podcast?
It's actually pretty good.
Sean hates his AI generated photo.
Yeah, it freaks me out. Like, it's definitely not me, and people like look at it next to me and they're like, "That's not what you look like." It's uncanny valley for sure.
Mine's like if I went on a hunger strike for like 30 days, what my face might look like.
It's quite gaunt. Yes,
it is.
Love it. All right, boys, episode 34 of the pod. Sean, why don't we start with, you've been all over Twitter, man. Like, dude, your Twitter game is getting good. I got to say, you're giving Mike here a run for his money. Talk to me about this like Christmas tree ecom GQ score thing that you posted. Was that you grading yourself too afterwards?
Yeah. Has anyone ever played like World of Warcraft or any sort of like, like role playing skill building game? It's like
Jason only plays golf.
I played Dungeons and Dragons for 2 weeks when I was 10 years old. And I quit.
Yeah. Well, it's, in any of those games, you level up. And when you level up, you get points, and you can put those points to whatever you want to be proficient at, right? Like, if you want to be a mage or some shit, you want to do magic, like you fill out that part of the skill tree, and it's designed in a way that like you're always weak at something, right? Or it's really hard to get good at everything. And I just think e-commerce is the same way. And like you can think about like leveling up in like your career is like, you get smarter, or you hire people who are really good, or you improve your product. Like this is just getting more points to put it towards your skill tree. And I think it's just a good framework for all the nerds in chat to think about their business, right? I rated my business, and like I put it on like a 5, like a 1 through 5 scale, but like the beauty is like it could be 1 through 1,000, right? Like you could always get more points to improve your business. But the one off the top of my head I remember is like, margin. I think Ridge has the strongest margin profile of anybody in chat. The only company that rivals us is like Hermes. Like we've done a great job building, and like we thought about that strategically. Like how can we lower COGS and still deliver value? Like what sort of products fit into that category? And we found them and we've make them, and that's like the product line we expand into. So I'm 5 out of 5 on that, right? But the challenge is people do not repeat buy my shit. So like I'm like 1 out of 5 there. And you can just like, be honest with yourself, come up with, a 1 through 5 scale for all these different parts of your business. And then now you know what to put points towards when you level up. What's the hire you have to make? What's the, like the focus of the product team for the next year? That's just the way to think about it. And it's a very useful tool, and it's probably on screen right now, like right here, and you could just go do it yourself.
Mike, did you look at this thing? Did you see?
I had not seen this. This is the first time. Sean, what I try and do in quality, Sean hits in quantity. Like I feel like every time I open X, it's just like 6 tweets from Sean, and so it's just kind of a combination of like, it's like, it'll be this amazingly insightful thought that I'll think about for like 10 minutes. And then there's like just some meme, and then him kind of like, shaking his fist at the sun. And it's just like the diversity and quantity of content in Sean's Twitter game. I'm in awe. I'm like, I must not have very much going on in my head compared to Sean, because he just has way more thoughts to share with the world.
I think his brain's a mess, is what he's proving.
No, he just has no hobbies. That's why.
No, he doesn't play golf.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think Mike, Matt, and even Jason to a certain degree, like you guys are thoughtful. You guys are like purpose-driven human beings. And you have way more fun on the internet if you just say whatever the fuck you want, whenever you want. And it's like, I don't care.
Sean just totally pulled the goalie. He pulled the filter 100%. And it's just amazing what comes out. It's a gift to the entire e-commerce world, really.
I think Jason's going to be more on my team pretty soon. Just start letting it rip, dude. Because, like Mike, you just put out this amazing thing about like your ESOP program, and it's like thoughtful and it's beautiful and it's crafted. And then I'm like, fuck you, Narvar.
Sean is right that I do have a lot of opinions that I keep close to the vest, because I have my duty first and foremost is to Hexclad and the owners of Hexclad, and Twitter is a great platform for me, but it's not a platform for me to really like share my opinions about a lot of things. I just don't do it. But I do like what?
If you want Jason's opinions, go to onlyfans.com/Jason Panzer.
No, what we're going to find out is that Jason is like, he's got a cartoon avatar account that's like pots and pans guy, and where he's just throwing fire takes about all kinds of stuff, and it's going to come out that's your burner.
What was funny, this was a Sean moment, and I didn't have to do it, but there was some SaaS company or some agent, I don't even know what they were, to be honest, and they put us on their website as a client, and I didn't know who they were. And the only reason why I found out about it is because some private equity firm texted me. A guy at a private equity firm was like, "Hey, I see you're a customer of these guys. What do you think?" And I looked it up and I'm like, "What? I have no idea." And I'm not the type of person to just rip into people in general. I figured I didn't know enough, so I didn't want to jump to any conclusions. So I asked my team, and they're like, "Yeah, we used it for like a week and we didn't like it." And blah, blah, blah. And but I didn't out them to the PE firm, but I did tell my team to like reach out to whoever it is and tell them to get our name off their website right now. And it's pretty amazing. There's another SaaS provider who actually I like, and I was talking to him yesterday. Really small company, and he's like, we were like a couple $100K a month in MRR. And then we signed you guys, and then now we're like over $1 million. And trust me, the $1 million isn't from us. It's not from us. And people are just like, "Oh, Ridge is a customer, right? Simple Modern is a customer. Pila Momi are customers." It is pretty amazing. So I think letting people know, like, pop off at people when Sean says, "Hey, I'm not doing business with someone unless I can talk to their CEO." I used that line on a guy the other day too, because I thought it makes a lot of sense. And we're at this point now with our brand where we are in uncharted territory. Like Hexclad, you guys all know the numbers. I'm not going to talk about them on this pod, but like we are so in uncharted territory. I'm like literally trying to figure out totally new things that I was trying to figure out last year, and last year trying to figure out things and it's like, it's getting really hard to manage. And I think that it's like, I don't know how, like you said, I don't know how Sean has the time, because I feel like I need like 3 assistants to get done all the shit that I need to get done right now.
Well, so Jason, you touched on something, and Matt has a beautiful agenda today, so I don't want to ruin it. But
no, let's keep going. This is awesome. I love this.
What is your guys' opinion of agencies or SaaS providers putting your logos on their websites? Do you guys do they ask you? Do you guys get compensated? Like, because
I've never been compensated for it. I really like it when they ask.
As far as I know, Rich has never been asked. We've never been compensated. People just throw our logo around, and a lot of times they make up quotes, and sometimes pull photos of me from the internet. So if you ever see like a Ridge logo someplace, just DM me and ask if it's true. A lot of times it's not. Or like we worked together one time 6 months ago. But I'm just curious if you guys get approached by that. Like, I mean, we'll start with Mike.
Well, there was a situation with a partner that we've worked with, and they were a good partner, but they were like, you know, our CRO helped Simple Modern triple their website revenues. And I'm like, yeah, you guys were involved and you're a great partner, but also like, that's not why they tripled. You know, like the CRO doesn't triple your revenues. That's not how it went. It's more like, hey, we launched a bunch of good products and also we moved the ball a little bit on CRO and you guys were a great partner. So like that stuff is kind of like, I had a bunch of people message me and be like, hey, is this legit? And I'm like, yeah, they're legit guys, but they're definitely overselling, you know? But I think if you don't ask, to me, like showing somebody's logo that you don't currently work with, that's pretty shady. I think that's the line where it's like you said, if they're not a current vendor and you haven't asked, you shouldn't do it. And to me, it's certainly a credibility killer. There have been a few times, Sean, to your point, where somebody comes and they're like, hey, you know, we've worked with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and I'll send a text to Sean or I'll send a text to Jason or Matt or, you know, another one of the operators. And they're like, yeah, you know, we tried them once 7 months ago. We don't work with them. And it's like, it has the opposite of the intended effect where there's less credibility than if they had, you know, not shown it at all.
Mike, you said something super funny. Like the quote is, do ball boys get Super Bowl rings, right? Or like, you know, do they win world championships? I'm like, right. I guess they were there. They didn't fucking, you know, score the winning goal. And it's like, when you're successful, every fucking software on earth, every agency will be like, yeah, we did that. It's like, I like, you could put a monkey in front of a typewriter and it would get Jason a 10x MER. Like, so Homestead's great. They're crushing it. They're fantastic. But that rock, like like the other quote is, a seat on a rocket ship. Like, it doesn't matter what the seat is, you're still on a rocket ship.
Yeah. So do you know where that came from? Have you ever heard the origin of that? Or at least the origin I heard. The origin that I heard was, it's a Marissa Meyer story about the beginning of Google, that she was interviewing at Google and they really liked her. This is like when they had, I don't know, 10 employees or something. And Marissa was interviewing with them and somebody else. And she got to the point where she really liked Google better, but they just didn't know what role they'd stick her in. And so she told them, I think I'm going to go the other direction because I don't know what role I would take at Google. And Larry Page was like, Marissa, if somebody offers you a seat on a rocket ship, you take it and you figure it out later. And it really is true. I give that advice in a different context to younger people all the time. I'm like, you get an opportunity to work at a Hexclad or a Ridge, you take it. And, you know, like if you tell them you'll do anything, you'll be the janitor, you'll scrub toilets, because in growing companies, the frontier is always expanding and you're always kind of trying to keep your head above water. And so what'll happen is like, there's constantly opportunities that are just not getting done. And if you're the guy, if you're just in the building and you're like, hey, anybody see this over here? This is an opportunity. Hey, if it's cool with everybody, I'm just going to go do this. Everybody's like, yeah, that's great. Just let us know how it goes, you know, and you can totally like carve out a role for yourself. So
Mike, that's so true.
That's
such a good, I love that point, because, you know, you just got to show up. And if you, it like reminds me of when I was a first year associate at Skadden, when a lot of people my level were making copies and writing cover letters and sending faxes. Like, we didn't email documents back then. But when shit got really busy and like the partners needed someone who was not a total idiot, like I was running deals in my 5th month at Skadden and I had no business doing it, but I was there and I was like, I was not a moron. Like, just show up and you never know what can happen.
My standout moment for SendLane was in the chat this weekend when one of our friends was having a really hard time on Black Friday, and like some issue with email. I don't know the details of it, but it was an email issue. And the first thing that Sean said in response to that, and this is a testament to why you should consider SendLane and why they're a good sponsor is just email Jimmy. And it's like SendLane's not even this guy's provider, but the reputation that SendLane is building is that you're in the shit, they'll at least help you. Like that to me is such a mark of confidence in a SaaS platform. Like I've never seen that. Dude, I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen somebody say like, you're on a competitor's product, go ahead and give that person a call. So shout out to Jimmy for building a killer brand.
Hell far. Yeah. It's Jimmy's calling card on Twitter. He posts every Sunday that he's available to help. And Klaviyo closes support on Sunday. Do you know?
I just think it's like he's crushing it, man. So massive shout out to SendLane for the support on the pod.
We haven't switched over yet, but I have an email issue where our normal Gmail issue, it wasn't even about Klaviyo or anything. It was our normal Gmails were getting marked as spam. Jimmy joined our Slack and talked to our team and fixed the issue.
Is there not an argument though that like all of the variables matter to some degree? I mean, like it's like there's a, take too much credit on one side, and then there's like, you get no credit on the other of this spectrum. And clearly, like, if you're on the rocket, even if you're like sweeping the floors, you still matter. Like you're cleaning the floors up. Like the guy piloting it didn't trip and shit and fall. Like it's like, I just think like we're talking about a spectrum of stuff here, right? Like Sean, your original question, I hate it when people don't ask. I hate it. I loathe it when they lie. And I think Mike has a great point that actually, like, if you're doing this where you're like using a brand's logo and it's a lie, it's going to have net negative impact. Like you're actually just setting yourself up for failure. So stop, don't do that. But honestly, like I would love it if the whole industry just started asking like, hey, can I put your logo on our site? We thought we did some good work for you. Like it's a simple ask. And I have never, ever said no to the ask. Ever.
There's a similar, just as an interesting kind of bridge between the two ideas, you get a similar thing with employees. Anytime an employee's worked at a company when it's growing, they're certainly going to sell themselves off that, and they're going to accentuate the role that they played in that growth in the way that they pursue other opportunities. And to some extent, you just got to respect the hustle that anybody and everybody that's tied to a successful thing in any way that has any surface area, they're going to want to maximize how much they claim that they contributed to it. And in general, as a founder, like I try to be gracious about that and give a lot of credit, but I do think there's got to be boundaries to that where certain things you punch back on and you're like, okay, that's bridge too far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, I want to go right back to this. Like, there's been a few tweets on, I don't know if you guys have seen this like thing around like the answer to every question is always it depends. It's always a thing, and I say it a lot too, right? But Sean, one of the things I loved about your skill tree of like margin, repeat rate, TAM, logistics, AOV, cash flow, like one of the things I liked is now we're talking about the nuance of e-commerce or consumer. And I wonder if there are things that you didn't put on this, like, because obviously it's a fun tweet. Like it wasn't meant to be a think piece, I don't think. But I do wonder, like, what are the other key variables in a consumer business that would drive a lot of these debates that you see online, right? Like Taylor Holiday's thing on new customer acquisition versus like repeat revenue stacking. At the bottom, he's like, only works if you have strong LTV. So I'm like, that whole thing was like, that's not rich, right? That's probably more simple modern. I actually don't know where HexCloud sits on the like LTV repeat purchase rate conversation. But I do feel like Sean, somehow in your very simple, fun, gamey tweet, you summarized up like every debate that could ever be had in e-commerce. It's like everybody should just quote tweet that from now on. If you're going to fuck around and talk about ads, quote tweet that first as the like, here is the consideration for my meta argument for today.
Well, first, everything I do is a think piece. So let's put some respect on all the mock-up memes. No, it's true. Like, what do we always say? Like, every business is unique, right? If a software company is giving an oil drilling company advice, the advice isn't going to go very well, right? It's like the software company, like, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to be lean, like, make decisions quickly. But if your job is buying industrial equipment and then getting shit out of the ground, like you don't get to pivot. It's a $50 billion, mining operation. It's like, it has to work the first time. It has to be correct. So that's the extreme example. Like, yeah, we're all selling widgets on the internet, but like, it should be framed. If everyone walked around with a little scorecard attached to them, you could better filter advice, right? When I say shit like spend as much money on ads as possible, it's because that works for my brand, right?
Yeah.
Mike has found a niche where that would be very bad. If Mike went out there tomorrow and was like, I'm going to spend as much money as Ridge does on ads, like, he's slowly building the infrastructure to do that. But like a year ago, he just would have bankrupted himself, right? So like, all of us should have a little scorecard, and we could put it in the little window of our thing. So you could see how our business, and you could better match who should I be listening to here? Like, who actually has the advice for me, right?
Yeah.
Matt, you have a subscription play. You have very high COGS. You have a piece of technology. It plugs into a wall. It has really high engineering shit. Your cash flow bucket sucks ass, I assume.
It's so
right?
bad.
But you're going to make money from that customer for 7 years. And the only way I can make money from my customers is if I start stealing their wallets to try to sell them another one. And that's my next LTV plan.
Like cloud grifting.
Exactly.
Have you guys ever
It's
seen...
funny you would say that, Sean, that literally in an executive meeting this week, I literally used that exact same example, that I can use Ridge as an inspiration in some ways, but obviously you're trying, I think you posted something like you're going to try and spend $100 million on marketing. I don't know, it was some kind of crazy number where I was like, I don't know, that definitely doesn't make sense from our business in terms of our infrastructure. I don't even know if it ever makes sense for us to be quite at that scale, but it was that exact point where being able to have the wisdom of, here are the things that I can listen to from Sean, and I can say, oh, I think I can take that and apply that fairly tactically in my business. And then here's other things where I can hear the principle and I can apply the principle, but I'm going to do it really differently than Sean.
Yeah, our marketing budget next year is $100 million. So
wow,
that is wild.
I wish. Yeah, like you're right. Like Sean, it's like, this is such a great conversation. He's like, I could not spend that on Lomi. I couldn't even. We don't have the margin on the front end to do that. So we have to be way more like, let's just build recurring revenue and focus on retention, and it'll stack to some stupid number over time, right? Have you any of you guys ever seen a business that has like everything? It's got high repeat rate. It has high AOV. It's got stupid margins. Its conversion of EBITDA to cash is dumb. Like, have you ever seen a company? Are we aware of one that is like a perfect score? And Jason, if you say yourself, just like fucking leave.
Well, it's really not, because those pans last forever. I mean, it's got to be a consumable type product. I mean, isn't it makeup? Isn't that the kind of it's beauty related stuff typically? Like the combination of you got to keep buying it, and it's high margin, it's cheap to ship. It's that people tend to get find colors and things that work for them, and they go back to it over and over again.
I was thinking of like AG1 maybe. Could be an interesting one. Like it's $80 a month. I don't know what CAC looks like.
But you know what's interesting? Have you guys seen the tweets about AG1 where people are posting the affiliate landing page of it from like 2011? Have you seen this?
Yeah.
A couple of people have shown this, and it's like, it's just a good reminder that even for that brand that's grown to be so successful, if you look at where it was quite a few years ago, it was very differently situated. We'll just say it that way, And
this is a good topic. I like talking about AG because I hate supplements. I won't spend a penny on a supplement. I'm pretty fit for my age. I think it's all a grift. I think it's incredible what AG has done. But talk about spending a fortune on marketing. has anyone seen their numbers? If anyone has AG1's numbers, if you can get me really good numbers on AG1, I will send you a 12-piece set of cookware. Right?
Jason, just text me. I can save you the set. And Chris, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I've known Chris Ashendon, the founder of AG1, for years. He's a great guy. Like we were in a business mastermind together.
Super impressive what they've built, but
it's just and he was just like one of those founders that he actually is like just mega obsessive about the subject.
But we had an event in Miami last night at Art Basel, and there was a pretty senior Liquid Death guy there too. And those are the two brands that, it's like the amount of marketing spend and the amount of money raised. If we had raised $100 million, who knows? But we could be a much different business right now. No one would give Danny and Cole money when they started the business. No. They were like getting laughed at everywhere.
Well, I mean, that's welcome to my life with Lomi. It's my first time trying to raise money for Lomi was like, nobody's going to buy that, dumbass. Like I get laughed out of the room. Still do most places. The interesting thing with AG1 though that most people don't know is like Chris, he bootstrapped that company a long time before they raised money.
But
like that was a big business.
I mean, supplements are really like the cost to make that stuff is nothing. Nothing. So they ran it probably similar to the way Sean runs Ridge.
Yep.
And Mike and I run our businesses. But eventually they started to take off. They got to a certain level and they're like, okay, now we can raise some money and really blow it out. I guess we could do that. I don't know why we would. It's interesting. I'd love to understand their margins.
Could I make a very nuanced point? I do not know how their fundraising round went, but we just saw Jane, the female-focused, female-owned clothing company, go under. They raised $50 million, maybe it was $40 million, and 95% of the raise was secondaries. So there's this big number for this raise. I think it was 40 million and 38 million was secondaries, leaving $2 million in operating capital in the business. So if AG1 was a big profitable business for a long time, maybe the team just took a bunch of money off the table. So if you ever see a company raised X number of dollars, a lot of nuance in there. You don't know what's debt. You don't know what's primary. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's a relic that is going to go away. Is all these companies that had big secondary rounds that went bankrupt. There's just been a shocking number of those over the last few years.
Yeah. I think
I just want the nuance around messaging is anytime a private equity company does a deal, they always say they invested or they raised. And it's like, that's always secondaries. There's always debt-backed secondaries, but growth rounds plus secondaries are going away.
I don't know how much because they raised 115 million at 1.2. I don't know when that was. That was like 2022, right? And I don't know how much of that was primary versus secondary capital. I can tell you, I don't know if I actually told you guys this. In the money we've raised, I think we've raised close to like 35 million over 5 years. No secondaries. Like zero. And that would make me a dumbass. So that's not like a brag. That would make me an absolute dumbass. And on top of that, I fucking invested my own capital in this company. But I'm a dumbass. So I do think that the secondary thing is like, it'll always be there for great companies. Like you guys are going to see OpenAI is going to do a stupid secondary soon. Right. That's the rumor that, that's why the employees went mutiny. Because everybody was risking their secondary. So it's going to stick around. I just think it's going to be less common. I just don't believe
that's why Matt would like to thank our sponsors, SendLane, Fulfill, Northbeam, because he is POC committed. He needs the capital.
I'm the opposite of you guys in that my business eats cash and it even eats mine. And I'm just committed to the mission. So, swing big, I guess, on your second startup is what I'm an example of.
You're a standard tech company. I mean, that's
totally.
what we do.
Yeah. And I think, Jason, it's also like, Brad, my partner, Brad, and we've had exits. So it's kind of why not? This is fun, and let's go try to do something dumb and hard. And if it fails, it fails. Like, no big deal. I was joking with my YPO group yesterday on this. I was telling them a story. I won't go into the details on this because I'll probably get in legal trouble. But I'm like, and I was laughing about it. And they're like, why are you so happy? And I'm like, well, because this is just a game. Like, business is just a game, and if I was upset about this, I would really be questioning my life priorities. So like, I'm just not. And actually it's kind of fun, like this conflict this one specific example, I'm like, this is a great experience. And that's how I'm going to walk away from this and be like, that was fun. I may not like it right now, but it was going to be fun.
I'm just so not stressed about ops right now. And we're totally balancing the load using Fulfill in pretty real time. So we saw what was going on with orders, and we're like, oh shoot, like our guys in Tennessee, they're going to be overloaded. They're just going to be overloaded. We got to shift. Like, we just started moving states in Fulfill, moving it around, and boom, no problem at all. Like, it was no way we could have done this last year. I mean, it would have like put a bullet in my head if this would have happened. It's amazing how easy it was because we put in the work with Fulfill. We organized everything properly. And like, I got an email from Sharoon a couple of days ago, just like, hey, I know it's BFCM. If you need anything, call me. like what Sean said, not want to deal with, like, not hiring any company, any vendor, unless you talk to the CEO. Like, that was, we didn't need to talk to him because their team and our team did such a great job prepping for this. But we're going to do 150,000 orders in this month. Obviously, that's not a huge number for certain types of brands, but for us, it's a lot, and big boxes. And we just, we got to be really on our game. And without Fulfill, there's no way I would be with a smile on my face today.
I want to make a point about what you're saying though, Matt, which is, and this goes back to the fundraising thing, and even Sean's point about people are situated differently. When you have, we'll call it a material amount of liquidity on your personal balance sheet and you don't have debt, the motivations change a lot. Like a lot. Like, you could have two founders running similar businesses, and one has a secure personal balance sheet and one doesn't. And they should run their businesses very differently, and they should think about things differently. And this was actually something my brother, I think, taught me. This would have been, I don't know, probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit over a year ago, because I had been just kind of push every chip into the company, and I was running, I had no debt, but I maybe had $600,000 liquid in my personal balance sheet. The company was good. It was profitable, but it's like, and he pretty much was like, hey, at some point you're making a bad business decision if you don't start to take some chips off the table, because you never know what's going to happen with the economy. You don't know. And your ability even to lead the business is going to get impaired if you don't solidify your personal balance sheet. And so it's interesting. Even now, I'm exactly where you are, Matt. Like, I'm like, hey, let's go big. I don't mind it if big investments pay off slowly or don't pay off, because my personal balance sheet is in order. And so I'm just very differently situated. But when I was cutting it that close, it was a very different time. And I'll give a simple example of how my decision making was impacted. We got very heavy on inventory in some channels because of the supply chain stuff. And it led me to be a cranky pants with all of my planning people. I'm not usually a difficult person to work with, but they can tell you I was not an enjoyable person when we talked about inventory. And fortunately, I was able to work through that and allow them to work through that. And they've done great this year. But I had a period where I was not probably a great person to work for. But it was a reflection on my personal balance sheet. And so for anybody listening to this podcast, like, one of the things is if your personal balance sheet isn't secure, then obviously you're going to be situated differently than us. You're probably going to run your business differently than us. And that's just smart. Because even if everything about the business is exactly the same as another person, if your personal balance sheets are different, you're very differently situated.
Mike, this was the founding of secondaries and VC rounds, because if somebody is too hungry, they will pass up the $1 billion, which is far in the distance, for 50 million right now. So VCs were like, hey, just take $1 million, take 2 million, take 3 million, buy a house, be comfortable, and let's go for that $1 billion exit. It's better for everybody. It got perverted when people were taking $20 million, which is, close to fly private money. And then they started, Adam Newman got basically $300 million. And he's like, okay, well, WeWork's actually going to be a religion. And it's like, that's when he's like, okay, that's too much money.
Yeah. Look, Mike, I think it's such a great lesson for entrepreneurs that, getting to kind of like first base, like just financial security, financial independence. I like your framing, like personal balance sheet. It matters a lot in just providing you with like, it's like a foundation for clear thinking. Right. And that number and, what your balance sheets look like, that's super subjective. Like I hate these like tweet threads, which is like, how much money do you think you need for like financial freedom? I'm like, I don't know. Do you live in like Hong Kong or like remote town, Texas near the Mexican border? Like those are two different people. But I do think that like, no matter what, figuring out what that is for yourself and then working to that before you go do anything crazy is probably good directional advice, I think.
It used to be $1 million, then it became $5 million, and it's probably somewhere between $5 and $8 million. It's
probably like
somewhere in there.
Broadly, right? No matter where you live.
One of the most interesting dynamics to me about this is it has to do with how long you see yourself working and expectancy of work. When I'm working, I spend a lot less money. Money. It's when I'm not working, and I've got nothing to do. That's when it's like vacations and like, money just kind of gets spent. And so I think when people say I need $8 million to feel secure, what I'm hearing is I don't want to work anymore. And I'm going to be actively spending money.
Right.
Because I feel like it's a much smaller number if you're like, I'm going to continue to have a job and like spend a significant amount of my time trying to work on problems.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think I didn't, between my like selling my last company and building this one, I took no time off. So I don't know what life looks like if I'm not actively busy. I actually don't know I don't even know if I could not be building something. Like if this business went away tomorrow, I'd probably just turn around and do another one. Cause it's fun. It's like, it's the best hobby ever. I get why Sean doesn't have any other hobbies. I mean, it's just like, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm also not employable. So like,
none of us, nobody is, man, that does this.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why you got to get more liquid on your personal balance sheet. I think you're making a great point, Sean. Entrepreneurship does kind of ruin you. Like, I consider myself to be a smart person, a team player. I would not last for a year in any Fortune 500 environment. There's just no way.
Okay. I want to switch over. I have a question for you guys. And Sean, this is actually one of your prolific tweets that got me thinking about this. And this was a conversation we were having internally here maybe a month or two ago. What I've noticed on Peel a Case is that like we've got almost 2 million customers that we've acquired through like probably Facebook ads. Does the size of your customer base impact the efficiency of your advertising? Like Sean, you've got like, I don't know how many millions of customers at this point. Like the more customers you acquire, in my mind, that would actually make it more difficult and more expensive to acquire new customers. And that got me thinking, like every time I see a thread or a post on like somebody showing me like a 2 or a 3x MER or AMER from Facebook, all I think is, dude, you don't have a lot of customers. Like you are a brand new company. That's like my first thought. And I don't even know if I'm wrong or if that's directionally correct.
Matt, I think you're wrong.
I'm wrong?
I think you're wrong. Because the more customers
you don't count again.
No. Listen, the more customers you have, if you have a good product, I mean, they're the brand flywheel, right?
Right. But I'm saying like the Facebook as I'm getting as an acquisition channel. I agree with that, Jason. I think like Pila, we've actually just been able to spend less money over time because word of mouth is amazing, right? But I have a hard time now spending money on Meta for Pila Case to get new people that don't come in through word of mouth and other stuff.
Well, Jason, what percentage of your revenue in a given period comes from brand new customers?
Percentage wise, it's not a good comparison because it's not a good number because we're adding so many new customers at a high AOV, but it's between 15 and 25% from returning customers, depending on what we're pushing at the time. Like if we drop a new product, it's going to be more like north of 20 in the 25 range. If it's just business as usual, then we're just doing, the usual like 15, 18%.
Yeah. What Matt is saying is technically correct, is that the more customers you acquire on a channel, the more expensive that one channel is. It's just the math is technically correct. There's a certain amount of people who really want your thing and they're very cheap to reach. Then there's a circle where it's a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. But what Jason's saying is it is outweighed by the social proof of a fast growing brand. It's outweighed by everything else. And I think it depends on scale, moment in time, whatever else. And also I think TAM plays a big part. Like cookware TAM's really big, but if you are the snow shovel guy, the people in market right now for snow shovels is 4 million people. You can sell to those 4 million people, but then once you start reaching people in Florida, nobody wants a snow shovel, and it'll be very, very difficult to sell one. So I think you're technically correct, Matt, but what Jason's saying is that there is, for him particularly, once again, the scorecard, the benefits way outweigh the decrease in people in market. Jason, you have another point?
Yeah, that's right. And look, every company's different. We say this all the time. And that's the thing that's really important to understand, that it's never an apples to apples comparison.
Mike, what's your repeat customer rate in Shopify? What percentage of revenues from repeat customers, not repeat customer rate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll give you guys some numbers on that. Because it's funny, this question, somebody asked me on one of the things I tweeted out. He just said, "Hey, what's a good returning customer rate for revenue?" And the point that I made to him is, you can't actually answer that question in a vacuum, because listen, you can get 100% returning customer revenue if you're not acquiring any new customers, right? If you're totally failing at customer acquisition, you're going to have great. As a percentage of revenue, it's going to look great. So I tend to think about it like the way it breaks down for us. We are, let's see, last month. What are we? As I'm pulling that up, so what we focus on is LTVs and saying, hey, what are return rates for existing customer cohorts and how much are they spending and how does that compare to previous groups? And we measure efficacy there. So like our returning customers are 36% of sales. And usually that's pretty healthy. That means we're bringing people back at a good rate and we're bringing a bunch of people in. But without drilling into LTVs, my view is that stat doesn't matter and doesn't make any sense. So you got to know what's going on the acquisition side and what's going on your LTV side for your returning users.
Mike, you are so correct, and this is worth a total derailment of the show. If you go into Shopify and you look at the analytics dashboard and you see percentage of revenue from returning customers, that doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? It's because it can be manipulated with a failure to acquire new customers or a success in acquiring new customers. If you're a fast-growing brand like Hexclad today, if you're up 100% year over year, the cohort isn't big enough or mature enough to be meaningful for today's revenue or next month's revenue or whatever else, right? So those things have to normalize for that percentage to make sense. What Mike is saying is, I'm going to put some words in your mouth. Download the Lifetimely app on Shopify.
Absolutely. I was just about to say the same thing. Lifetimely, for sure.
That will build a cohort analysis so that you can look at what is happening with those cohorts over time. After a year or 3 years or 5 years, what percentage of that original AOV are you making in incremental dollars from that cohort? That is the only correct way to look at return on customer revenue. And we could throw out numbers like, oh yeah, 20% of people coming back today, whatever. It is a false metric, and you have to go back to like the true goal is to get the same people to come back multiple times. So
shout out to some Northbeam MMM and some other areas which we've been doing the work, but we saw this a year ago, how impactful TV has been for us. And I've been saying this too. It's like a lot of people are on Facebook, but not everyone is on it. Not everyone is on Instagram. Like,
I don't even
my
think it's
controller
that, man.
and my staff accountant, I'm talking to them the other day, and they're like, because I wanted them to log into Meta to be able to check how much we owe Meta because we went on invoicing for this period. They're like, we need to create Meta accounts to log in. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you don't have a Facebook account? Like, no. I'm like, what? You don't have a Facebook account? You're in your early 30s, late 30s, late 20s.
Wow.
No account. So, and also, I think TV just gives your brand a level of credibility and trust.
It's trust.
Just by being there.
I love this. This is actually like, I'll give you so PeelerCase we've been running now for 7 years. The interesting thing with PeelerCase, Sean, is it's a little like Ridge, right? In that our repeat rate sucks. Like LTV on PeelerCase is garbage. However, there is this thing called the iPhone release cycle. And what we've been able to do now, we're old enough now that we can actually see the period, like the time it takes for people to come back. So like the average person is cycling through a phone every 3 years. And we're now old enough that like these older cohorts where any consultant would say like, you've churned out of these customers. And I'm like, whoa. I got people from like 2019 and 20 that are now coming back and buying again that we would have we wrote off. We're like, those are churned out customers. But it's like, no, they were just waiting to get their next phone. So the cycles are just so long.
Yeah, and it's the difference between us and a SaaS product or anything else. Like your particular product has a 36-month LTV window, and everyone would say 12 months or 18 months. It is twice as long as what everyone else is doing. And it's because of the product and because customers do not change their phone case every week. Nobody's
we have a percentage that change it every 3 months.
A small percentage. Yeah, it's all statistics. I've done a lot of model building. I was that's where I got my start in e-commerce. I was the chief analytics officer with the thing my brother and I first did, and then I've moved into obviously other roles. But basically, if you're going to model your financial performance, you're really doing 3 things. You're saying people that have already bought from me, what percentage are going to come back each day, and you build that on cohorts. And then you're saying when they come back, how much are they going to spend and at what margin? And then you're saying how many new people am I going to be able to acquire, I think, each day and at what cost? And that's basically the components of forecasting. It's not, you can do a lot of math, but that's at the fundamental level, that's what you're doing with any forecast is you're trying to assess those 3 things. To me, the hardest part was always how many new people am I going to bring in and at what cost? The parts that become a lot easier because you get really big data sets and you get statistics are how likely is somebody from January 1st to come back on August 1st and how much are they likely to spend and at what margin. That stuff, as you get bigger and bigger sample sizes, you can get really good at that. And you can get really good at understanding if you're getting better or worse.
Yeah, it's such I love this topic. Like, I love it. It's because Mike, the model building for us is like we have 2 operating companies that are so different. We look at revenue retention on Lomi because it's all subscribers. not just like active churn, but credit card expiries, all that stuff. So it's like, what's your actual revenue retention on a 1-year cohort, on a 2-year, and then trying to forecast the business that way. And then peel a case, we're actually just getting good at forecasting now because we have like 7 years of data, right? And like, we kind of know that when we look in a month, we need about 55 to 60% of our revenue to come from new customers every month. And that is regularly soaking the sponge for
Do you guys
new
ever
demand.
hear of a platform called Decile?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we use Decile, and our retention team really likes it. So since you gave Lifetimely a free shout out, I'm going to give Decile a free shout out.
Okay, Jason, what does Decile cost per month?
About $6,000 a month.
Okay, Lifetimely is $100 a month Shopify app. So if you're not ready for $6,000 a month, go ahead and use Lifetimely.
You're ready for $6,000 a month.
Yeah, Ridge can. Yeah, but margins.
You can pull that out of my cold, dead hands. I'm not giving any SaaS vendor $6,000 in 2024.
Good, I'm going to go tell my team that maybe we're overpaying.
Reference the
Okay,
show.
so I have a question that's related to this. Typically, when you think about customer acquisition, and I don't think this is actually how this group thinks at all, which makes it interesting to me. Typically, when you think about customer acquisition in other businesses, they say, what's our LTV over a certain period of time? And that's what we can pay on customer acquisition cost, on CAC. But obviously, one of the reasons why that's hard to use on, like, say, a HexClad is that HexClad's introducing all these products, and that number is really moving on you, that potential LTV. So I'd love to know, do you guys think about that at all? Like, what's my LTV over a 6-month or 12-month or 3-month period? And do you try and match that up to your customer acquisition cost, or do you see those as totally decoupled?
Well, I would love to have better data on that and better understanding of that, because my gut tells me that we could let our CAC rise somewhat and still be pretty profitable. But it's one of those things where we just haven't had to really care about it yet. And we probably will at some point. But we just look at AOV to CAC and compare that. And I think LTV to CAC is a very common SaaS software analytics metric for investing, and I used to use it a lot when I was a banker, but it's just, it's hard to really, it's just like the returning customer analysis. It's like, I don't get a lot of meaning out of the difference between our AOV and our LTV is way, way lower than I think it should be over the very long term. And since I don't have any confidence in those numbers yet, it's just like, I just look at AOV to CAC and we make decisions that way.
And Jason, you are guaranteed to always be profitable doing that. I think if everyone took your approach, the e-commerce world would be a better place. Less people would raise money, less people would go out of business. That is a no nonsense way to do it.
Yeah. We've done both. So like on Lomi, we try to break even on device on day 0 and then make our money on the back end with subscription. We used to make money on device on the front end, and might actually return to that in 2024. We might just like be okay with slower growth on D2C, and then just like, we're so multi-channel, and just focus on selling B2B, right? And let D2C be like mega profitable, slower growth. It's gonna be the smallest part of that company in 5 years. Like, D2C will be so tiny for Lomi as a channel relative to what we do with multifamily and municipal. But Lomi is like a tech company. It's not a consumer business. I run the exact same way on Peel a Case. Like, day 1, make money. If those people come back later, yay. Like, it's great, but that's a healthy business because you got to make money on day 1.
Yeah, we just set 12-month LTV targets, but they are disconnected from CAC targets. Like, we set a blended MER for the business, and then we have a LTV target we work towards. And obviously, the LTV revenue helps boost up the MER, because we're not looking at an AMER, we're just looking at MER. But Connor looks at AMER all day long, trying to figure out how many net new customers he's actually getting. But when I do planning for this business, I'm like, I want to do this amount of money and I'll spend this percentage of it on marketing. So I look at the blended number. But what I was going to say is like our current cohort targets are $200. So if a customer comes and makes a purchase, we want them to be worth $200 within 12 months. And we can get there by raising AOVs, or we can get there by raising LTV. I don't really care as long as I'm getting $200 out of these people. So that's the way we look at it. But guys, we're approaching the end. We got the Pan Man here. Jason, you've had about 50 minutes. Do you have a Panzerism ready to rip?
I do. This is a good one actually, because this is one near and dear to my heart. I think it's about being emotional and making decisions. So I think to be a really good operator, you need to recognize the impact of emotions on decisions. Of course, in marketing, right? You guys are all great marketers, and marketing to people is about striking some kind of emotional chord in people very often. And that emotion may be FOMO, or it could be anything. But I see it in business decision making, and I think it really is a cheat code for me. And one of the reasons why I really do the two things that I think make me a good operator are, one, knowing how to build a team and motivate people and inspire people. But equally important is knowing, like, when I'm being emotional, I need to check myself. And it amazes me how hard that is for people to do. And it's like ingrained in our lizard brain, but like the whole human psyche, like you have to just stop yourself from being emotional. You have to sit back and say, hey, am I making an emotional decision here? Like you got to take a pause and take a breath. And like you see it with the news, you see it all over Twitter. You see, like, it's just incredible how how irrational human beings really are, and are just like, everyone's out there running these big businesses. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people that I'm close to, and I just watch them making business, like just gut reaction and gut instincts are important. They're like ingrained in human biology and genetics. But if you take those and think about, well, am I being emotional here? That to me is the cheat code to having really good judgment and being a good operator.
Hey, Jason, do you have any tips? Because I find myself to be very irrational. I think a lot of my decisions I make out of a place of emotion or anger. And what I do is I try to, if I feel like I'm doing that, I just push a meeting back a week so I can think about it more. But I would love to hear any of your tips.
Yeah, I think you have to you really have to take a beat, and you really have to just remind yourself. A lot of things go back to me being in law school, where we always argued every side of both sides of every case. It was just a part of the deal: issue, rule, application, conclusion. And the application was always both sides of the issue. And you just have to force yourself as much as you can to look at both sides of the issue. And I think that to me is how to do it, is to say, okay, why is this wrong? What's wrong about this decision? Am I acting emotionally? And just like, I mean, it's not easy to do. It's really not easy to do. Like, you see a Slack or see an email, you're like, why is this decision being made this way? Why didn't someone ask me about this? And the question is, like, are you just reacting emotionally about it because of, some reason, or do you really have like a valid concern? So I don't know if I would have to push meetings off for a week, Sean, but just asking that question, like, really, really, what is the other side of the argument that I'm making, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll just say Connor's a great partner in this. He's very rational. He thinks long and hard about things. He's very reflective, and he'll look inside to make sure he's making the right thing. I think have a tendency to just blow up, and I'll be like, I will literally kill and eat you, and I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back on that. So this is a good panzerism for me in particular.
That's a therapy thing, Sean. Yeah.
I think it's because I got kicked in the head by a horse when I was a kid, so I just have really bad impulse control or something.
It's a great panzerism, Jason. This is also where like having an awesome team can be super useful. Where like you can actually ask your team, like, somebody argue the other side of this. You know, like as entrepreneurs, we get super tunnel visioned into like, this is the greatest thing ever. And you just need people around you that are willing to argue the other side of it. And everybody needs to be okay that like, it doesn't matter who's right. It just matters what's right.
I did buy Connor the signed Taylor Holiday baseball card for his birthday. I'll send a photo in chat for everybody. Connor got us his
so amazing. I love that. That better make it onto Twitter. That'll be so good. All right, boys. Episode 34. It's a wrap.